They told him he didn't belong in first class and forced him out. Hours later, the truth about who he really was left the entire world in shock. The ballroom shimmered with golden light as chandeliers cast their glow over marble floors and glittering gowns, a stage set for the city's most powerful to gather in celebration of wealth and influence. Among the polished faces and rehearsed laughter, one figure stood out, not because of extravagance, but because of quiet strength. Amara Williams, a woman whose journey from hardship to triumph had captured headlines, arrived at the gala in a sleek black gown that spoke of elegance without arrogance. She walked through the grand doors with confidence, her posture tall, her eyes calm. But the moment she entered, whispers began to ripple across the room. Some turned to stare, not with admiration, but with thinly veiled disbelief that she could stand among them as an equal. A waiter brushed past her too quickly, spilling champagne across her gown. And though she smiled and accepted his apology, she noticed the smirks exchanged between two executives watching from the corner. Another group of guests, huddled near the stage, glanced her way before muttering and chuckling as though her presence were a joke. Yet Amara moved with quiet dignity, refusing to let their actions bend her spirit. Every step she took was measured, every glance met with poise, her silence a shield against the arrogance around her. What they didn't see was the weight of history she carried, the struggles that had shaped her, the sacrifices she had made, the endless nights spent building a company that now had the power to change industries. To them, she was an outsider trespassing in their world of privilege. To herself, she was proof that no room was too grand for someone who had earned their place through grit and brilliance. And as the music swelled and the gala began, Amara prepared for the night that would test not her success, but her strength. As the evening unfolded, Amara found herself seated at one of the front tables, her name displayed elegantly on a small gold card, a sign that she was no ordinary guest, but an honored figure of the night. Yet the treatment she received told a very different story. When the host introduced key guests, her name was skimmed over so quickly that it sounded like an afterthought, while others received long introductions and warm applause. During dinner, one of the executives at her table leaned across, his smile sharp as a blade. "So, Amara, what brings you here tonight? Surely not business. This is a serious gathering." His tone dripped with mockery, and laughter rippled softly around the table. She met his eyes calmly, replying, "I was under the impression this was a gathering of leaders. That makes this exactly where I belong." The laughter faltered, but the sting of disrespect lingered. A second insult soon followed when the event organizer politely asked her to shift seats, claiming a mistake had been made and her spot was meant for someone else. Though she complied with grace, she could feel the stares burning into her, as if she were being pushed to the margins of the room. More whispers circulated, careless words about her gender, her race, her rise to success, spoken as if she couldn't hear them. Each slight cut at her pride, but not at her resolve. Inside, Amara's heart hardened, not with anger, but with clarity. She understood that this night was not about celebration. It was a test of how much she could endure without losing her composure. She sipped her water, her gaze steady, her silence powerful. What they mistook for weakness was actually the stillness before a storm they would never see coming until it was far too late. As the cabin doors closed and the plane prepared for takeoff, Marcus tried to distract himself with a magazine, but the unease around him only grew heavier. The whispers in first class had become sharp stares, eyes lingering on him as if his very presence was a mistake. Before long, a flight attendant returned, this time with her supervisor at her side, holding Marcus's ticket between her fingers as though it were counterfeit. "Sir, I need you to step into the aisle while we confirm a few details about your seat," the supervisor said, his tone clipped and cold. Marcus felt the familiar burn of frustration rise inside, but he stayed calm, standing tall and placing his magazine neatly on the seat. All eyes were on him now. Some passengers smirked, others shook their heads with knowing looks, as if they had expected this moment all along. The supervisor examined Marcus from head to toe before asking in a condescending tone, "This ticket was purchased under your name?" Marcus reached into his jacket, pulling out his boarding pass and government-issued ID. His voice was steady as he replied, "Yes, everything is in order." Yet, the supervisor frowned, whispering to the attendant as though Marcus's very existence in first class needed further verification. From across the cabin, a man scoffed loudly. "First class isn't for everyone." Marcus heard it clearly, his pride pierced by the words, but he kept his composure. He looked directly at the supervisor and said evenly, "You are making a mistake, but it's up to you to decide how big of one." His quiet confidence unsettled the man, who hesitated, unsure of his ground. What Marcus didn't know was that this moment, captured by watchful eyes, was about to spark a storm far bigger than the cabin itself. When Amara re-entered the ballroom, the energy of the night was unchanged for everyone else, but within her, a quiet storm raged with purpose. She moved gracefully through the crowd, her head held high, each step a declaration that no insult could break her. Within minutes, whispers began to ripple. Someone had caught wind that the billion-dollar deal she was negotiating had collapsed. Executives scrambled to confirm the news, phones buzzing discreetly beneath linen tablecloths, eyes darting toward Amara with growing unease. The same men who had smirked at her earlier now wore masks of confusion and panic, their carefully crafted confidence cracking at the edges. Amara, however, remained serene, sipping her glass of water as though the world hadn't shifted. One of the hosts approached her cautiously, his voice low but urgent. "Ms. Daniels, is it true? The deal has been canceled." Amara met his gaze, her eyes unwavering. "Yes," she said simply, her tone sharp enough to cut through the noise around them. The host stammered, "But why now? Why tonight?" She leaned closer, her words a blade cloaked in calm. "Because respect is the true currency in business. And tonight, you all showed me exactly how little you value it." Her response spread through the room faster than the music could drown it out. A hush fell over the tables, the weight of her decision settling heavily in the air. For the first time that evening, the men who had dismissed her found themselves silenced, not by her gender, not by her presence, but by the undeniable fact that power was hers to give or to take away. The Gala's glittering lights suddenly seemed dimmer, and every eye followed Amara as she turned away, leaving behind the fractured pride of those who had underestimated her. The tension inside the cabin grew heavier with every second as Marcus stood in the aisle, his daughter Maya clutching his hand tightly, her wide eyes filled with fear and confusion. The supervisor finally cleared his throat and said, "Sir, I'm afraid you'll need to move to economy until we verify this matter." His words hung in the air like a judgment already passed, and a few passengers murmured their approval, their faces smug with silent satisfaction. Marcus took a deep breath, forcing himself to remain calm, though inside he felt a storm raging. He bent down slightly to Maya and whispered, "It's okay, sweetheart," before straightening with quiet determination. His voice was calm but firm as he answered, "I paid for this seat. I have every right to be here. If you believe otherwise, call your captain and airport security, but I will not move simply because my presence makes some people uncomfortable." A hush fell over the cabin, his words cutting through the whispers like a blade. A passenger across the aisle rolled his eyes and muttered, "He's just making a scene," while another passenger, a woman in the corner, discreetly raised her phone, recording every word. Marcus's posture remained steady, his hands still gripping Maya's protectively as he added, "Right now, you are teaching my child that her father can be humiliated for nothing more than the color of his skin. Is that the lesson you want her to remember?" The supervisor froze, visibly shaken by the weight of Marcus's words, and the once smug whispers in the cabin now turned uneasy. Some passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, while others avoided his gaze entirely. In that heavy silence, Marcus knew this was no longer about a seat. It was about dignity, justice, and the example he refused to let his daughter forget. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, comment, and share your thoughts. Subscribe now to Black Stories for more powerful and life-changing stories every week.